Greetings. My name is Kate Rademacher, and we're here with Writing for Your Life and Compassionate Christianity. And we're here with one of our favorite people. I'm so excited, Barb Roose. And I had the amazing opportunity to meet Barb a couple of years ago when we were in Atlanta for a Writing for Your Life event. And I just fell in love and I just love everything Barb's doing and so impressed and kind of awed and inspired by your work. And I know that you do many, many things and have multiple vocations. So hopefully we can hear about those from you today. But just briefly, for those who don't know, Barb is a published author. She's an accomplished speaker and a popular speaker, and also is a literary agent. So again, she does many things and works in this field in multiple ways. So Barb, welcome back to Writing for Your Life. Thank you for being here. And can you maybe just start off by telling us, that was just a really brief overview, but for those who are listening or watching who aren't familiar with your work, can you tell us about kind of some of the different things you do and maybe a little bit about how you got into this journey in the beginning, to begin with? Thank you.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you and I get to spend this time together. It isn't quite the same as when we were in Atlanta. And I just remember being out to dinner after when we were all hanging out. And so thank you for having me as a guest. Oh, love working with you. For me, I am a full-time speaker and author, and I also serve as a literary agent. What is valuable for me, I love to help serve others. If you go to my website at barbroose.com, it says I love helping women live beautifully strong and courageous in Christ because I believe that God has a great adventure of faith and purpose for their lives. And so I spend a lot of time with my primary audience of women, but I believe that kind of mission statement translates over to my work in publishing. One of the reasons why I love speaking at writers' conferences and teaching at writers' conferences is because I love helping people find that next step. I love helping people discover what it is, those pieces to the publishing puzzle, because I started at zero, like pretty much everyone. When I came out of what I was doing, I was in full-time ministry as an executive pastor and teaching pastor at a megachurch. I had no experience in publishing. I didn't know about the world of blogging or speaking or authoring, none of that. And so yeah, I was standing there in the cold going, what do I do now? And over the years, I have been so blessed by people that God has sent into my life at different stages and phases to help me figure out this life that we call publishing. And that's why it's so valuable for me to be a part of helping others as well.
Well, thank you so much. And can you just remind us, for those who aren't familiar, the name of your literary agency? And then I want to ask you about your books.
Yes, I am represented by Books and Such Literary Management. We are a full service Christian literary agency. Books and Such is, I think, 28 years old now. I've been represented as a client since 2014, and I've been a literary agent for the agency since 2020.
That's awesome. I love that you sort of have both sides of the industry, like in your pocket and in your lived experience. That's great. Well, part of the reason I was hoping to talk to you is this is a little belated, but have been following you online and saw that you came out last year with a book called Stronger Than Stress. And I'd love to hear you just talk about that book and how it's going. I know a lot of us are stressed out right now, and it feels like things are just kind of getting worse as the world gets more polarized and divided, and a lot's going on in the global and national and local landscape. So, can you just tell us about your book, Stronger Than Stress? What are you hoping to accomplish with this book, and what do you sort of offer your readers who encounter that you're writing in this way?
Well, I love all of those questions. And for me, I think it's fun to talk about stress because it's one of those topics that we complain about, but we don't talk about. Kate, like, does life feel stressful for you right now?
It's almost like a rhetorical question, right? Yes, I do have some stress, like
Eh,
most of us.
And so the conversation in Stronger Than Stress looks at this idea of why in the world would God create us to have stress? And what do we do about this? Like everything God created is good. And how in the world can stress be good? Well, the premise of the book is about if we are going to be stronger than our stress, then Jesus must be our strength. And what does that mean? And how do we live that out? So I happen to have this little handy dandy balloon here because one of the primary problems with stress is that we ignore it. Stress is what God created to put within us to help us understand how we're handling the world around us. We ask a variety of questions that impact our stress. Am I okay? What's going to happen in the future? Am I seen and loved? Those questions, our body is automatically looking for the answers to those. And as we go out through our day, and we don't necessarily feel like those are yeses, our body, like we start to store stress. In the book I talk about stress starters: what's uncertain, what's uncomfortable, what's unexpected, and what's uncontrollable. And each time we encounter those factors, our body starts to gather stress. And I want to use this visual as a balloon because you and I know that we're stressed, but what we don't want to acknowledge is how stressed we are. So we have empathetic distress, and that's the stress that we feel when someone else is having a hard time. So when we're looking at our world today and we're seeing people struggling and we're feeling that stress, and then we have emotional distress, and that's the stress that we're experiencing. It's a piggyback on top of if you're running low on money. The emotional stress is, am I going to make it? Am I be okay? You're staying up at night. And so when we're feeling emotional distress, or maybe you've got grief from the loss of a loved one, or perhaps a disappointment, but that stress builds up.
I'm getting
And then
nervous.
And then we've got chronic stress. And that's the stress that we carry around every single day when we feel unsafe in the world around us. And right now they are piling on chronic stress every day. This is what's happening. Now, we ignore stress because we say we've got to take care of everyone else. We've got too much to do. But Kate, does this feel like what some of us are carrying around on the inside?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
I call this our lifestyle of stress. And when we have a lifestyle of stress, we live under pressure like this. And what we don't do are the things that regulate our stress so that we can reduce it. We are not sleeping well. We are not eating well. We are not exercising. We don't have good connected relationships with others. We do not have connection with God. And so we walk around like this. And the problem is that all it takes is a bad meeting at work, the dog chewing through something, the car not working, and then we pop. And normally I would pop this, but I did not because I want to freak everybody out. But we pop. And then when we pop, then that starts to have a negative reaction because when we pop, we lose our temper. We start screaming. We start binging. We then begin to start doing things that aren't healthy, helpful, or even holy for us. So that's kind of that analogy that I use around stress. Was that helpful? What do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's very provocative and true. So tell us what to do about it. And I know you have a Christ-based response, and particularly I'm curious about how you, well, maybe you tell me if this is relevant, but sort of lean on St. Paul's teachings to help us navigate this.
I do. So the premise of Stronger Than Stress is if you want to be stronger than your stress, then Jesus must be the core of your strength. I was inspired There's a book that's almost 40 years old by Richard Foster called Celebration of Discipline. And I came across that book at a time in my 20s when I was overwhelmed by stress. I had small kids. I was married at the time. I was sleepless during the day, stressed out at night. Every single day, I was that balloon and I popped all of the time. And some of my aha moments came when I realized that if I was going to become stronger than my stress, then I had to look at what the way of Jesus, how that informed my life. But when I also was thinking about the book, I was thinking about who was the most stressed out person in the Bible other than Jesus, and it was the Apostle Paul. And so he was shipwrecked multiple times. He was whipped multiple times. He was imprisoned multiple times. He had problems from his own tribe. And so there were all of these things. And I was like, that dude. And so as we were looking at the way, right? We were looking at the way of Jesus. I was looking at this Richard Foster book on spiritual practices or disciplines. And so I began to go through and go, what are some of the spiritual practices that reflect the way of Jesus, and how do those practices help us deal with stress? The very first spiritual practice in the book is the practice of surrender. And what I want to share with you, Kate, and everyone listening briefly, is something that I believe can help you right now. Because as long as you and I live under this lifestyle of stress, the belief inside of us that is keeping us here is first, we believe that we're supposed to be everything to everybody. And the second is we believe that God has called us to set ourselves on fire to keep everyone warm. And those two fallacies will keep us here and popping. So one of the very first like next steps is simply recognizing you can't do it all and you can't control it all. And that is that's the message of surrender. And the chapter title is a brief prayer, Kate, and that prayer is simply this: God, I can't, but you can, and I will let you. And that simple prayer helps us in those times in life where we can't change it, we didn't cause it, we can't control it. If you are anyone who's a part of a 12-step program, you know that I took some of that. In my world, a lot of my stress was related to a spouse who developed a drinking addiction. And the amount of stress that was building up inside of me, and I would pop. Well, I'm responsible for my response in life. And I had to recognize I was not going to be able to control someone else's struggle. And I was trying to control it. And so I had to begin praying that prayer. And that was that first step of surrender. And if I can share one more practical tool, every day we have to be able to surrender in order to not take our stress out on others. And so there's something simple called hands up and hands down that I like to use. Do I have time to share that?
Please, I need to learn this. So, yes,
Okay.
definitely.
So in the surrender chapter of Stronger Than Stress, every chapter has specific tools that go with it. But in order for us to not take our stress out on others and take it to God, you simply start with your hands down. And hands down is letting go. And you can use any words that you would like for this prayer, but something like, God, right now, I am releasing my frustration, my anger, my sadness, my disappointment over, and you tell God what it is. Be honest with God. People at work got on your nerves. You were disappointed because payment didn't come through. You're running low on money, whatever. But you just say, God, I'm going to give all of that over to you right now. And then you flip your palms up and say, God, I'm about to go in to be with the people that I love. And so please fill me with your grace, strength, and love so that I can give it to those that I love. Amen. And so you can use this hands down, hands up exercise before you get out of the car to walk in the house with your family, before you leave your bedroom in the morning to join your people, before meetings at work, especially if you know there's people that drive you crazy. These are all spaces where you can use that surrender tool to give your stress to God.
Well, thank you, Barb. And I'm having a little bit of stress right now because my video has decided to completely stop in the middle of this interview, but I'm with you. And I'd love to keep going because this is just how life is, in modernity. So my next question is, how are people responding to this book? Like, I love it. I'm drinking everything you're saying in. Can you just tell me what's the reception been like, and what have you learned as this book has launched?
So the fun part about traditional publishing, if you've ever been traditional published, you know that there's some lag time before you know exactly what's going on, because there isn't a way to just say, "Hey, XYZ number of copies have been sold." So as an agent, what I tell my clients is, yeah, you know what? Sometimes Amazon can give you a little bit of insight. I have, when I look at the number of copies that I sell at speaking events, all of these are trending positively. I did get an email from my editor a month or two ago, and she was excited. She said that the sales for this book are tracking with the sales of another popular book that I have. But what I have had to train myself as this Pray Like This, which is my new book. That's my 13th book to the market. I've had to learn how to be very clear on what I can control and what I can't control. But yes, I'm happy that the book appears to be doing well. What that means for sure, I don't know. I won't know until I get a royalty report, probably in the next 2 or 3 months.
Well, let's talk about your other book that came out, I think, at the end of 2024 or beginning of 2025.
Came out
Pray Like This.
exactly a month ago.
Oh, only a month ago. Wow, congratulations. I don't know if you have a copy of it you can hold up.
I did.
Yay. Pray Like This. It's beautiful. I love it. I love the design. I love how your name is I love it, the mountains at the bottom and your name kind of curves I love that. Anyway,
Well, wait,
tell us
can I tell
about
you,
this book.
can I tell
Yeah.
you a quick story?
Yeah.
So this book, I signed the contract for this book at the same time I signed the contract for the Two Stronger Than Stress book and Bible study. So this book actually, the release date had to be changed by a year. So I saw this cover for the first time almost 2 years ago and immediately called my agent in distress because I was like, I don't like this cover. I don't like this cover. And my agent goes, Barb, it's a beautiful cover. I said, I know, but I don't like it. I'd like to make some changes. She said, Barb, they've already created the cover. This is a good cover. I'm like, I know, but I don't like it. For 2 years, Kate, I was like, I don't like this cover. I would like to make. And it was the week before the launch, and I went, I really like that cover. And then when I went online to look at the early Amazon reviews, do you know what people are talking about, Kate? The cover.
The cover.
And so I want to share that quick story because so much of us in publishing, we put so much emphasis on the covers, but we have to remember that we ourselves always aren't the best arbiter of the cover itself. And it's good to have outside voices help us.
Well, amen to that. And I love it. I noticed it right away. So I'm with I'm pro cover. So tell us about it, because you're Bible, you offer Bible studies to folks, and it sounds like this is one obviously focused on Matthew. And just tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do with this book.
So I am primarily a Bible study author. In my life, I'm a Bible teacher, and I love helping people make the scriptures accessible, and teaching them in a way that reflects the real Jesus who came and wants to make a difference in our lives. I was never planning on writing a Bible study on prayer ever in a lifetime. So when that contract came down, I actually didn't know I was writing it on Matthew or prayer. They came to me and just asked me to write. And then there were a couple of ideas that I submitted, and they're like, yeah, let's go with that one. I was like, oh no. I was a do first, pray later kind of Christian. Like I always had something else to do. So whenever I would sit down to pray, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to pray for 5 minutes. But then I was so busy all of the time that I'm like, okay, I can only pray for 30 seconds. Like, I don't know if anybody else can relate to that. I also carried around a lot of guilt because I knew that I should talk to God more and I wasn't. And then when I would sit down and pray, I'd be like, okay, am I saying the right things? And then there was all this noise about, well, this is how you should pray and this is how you should pray. And it wasn't until my family's crisis with alcohol addiction that my relationship with prayer began to change. And when my relationship with prayer, by that, what I mean is how I approached prayer, what I believed about it, my theology about it. And what I had to settle on for me was that there was a God who loved me and that he had given me the opportunity to talk to him. And that led me on a journey over a decade ago to just go, what is it that Jesus told me I needed to do? And so the Bible study, Matthew Pray Like This, is about, we go through the book of Matthew, but the framework is around Jesus teaching in the Lord's Prayer, which is like 6, 7 verses. I think a lot of the reasons why people don't pray or they struggle with prayer is because we have added all of these extra layers to prayer that Jesus never taught. And and it is in the freedom of realizing the framework that Jesus taught that I began to pray more often. And so the more you pray, the more you pray. So this Bible study is about just going, let's step out of the noise. Let's step out of the bad theology and let's look at what Jesus teaches about prayer and what Jesus' teachings about prayer help us understand about the actual heart of God. Because God sees us, He loves us, He cares about us. He has a sovereign eternal plan that doesn't always make sense to us. I had a lovely life that began to melt away due to a spouse's addiction. That never will make sense to me. But I have learned in growing close to God, the aha has been for me that God sees me, He loves me, He has a plan, and I can trust Him.
Well, I love that. And as a person who's totally committed to a daily prayer practice or thereabouts, I love that you're calling us back to also what scripture tells us prayer is, rather than all the things we load onto it. So thank you for that. And I can't wait to read this book. Can we just pivot since we have you and you're such an expert in all these ways? Can you, I know you have a bazillion pieces of advice for writers and aspiring writers, and you give talks on this and workshops, but just kind of what's on your heart these days of either how the industry is changing or getting back to basics, or just like if someone's listening and needs some advice or encouragement on the writing journey, kind of what comes up for you.
This is something, and I'm so glad you asked this question. This is something that I share at every single writers conference because it's something that everyone, no matter what stage you're at in your journey, that we have to have clear. And it's the difference between what you can control and what you can't control. I am someone who kind of is more on the more controlling. I call it control loving. I have a surrendered Bible study about letting go of control. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to do everything I can and I'm going to make it happen. But in the writing journey, there are just things we don't have control over. But what we will miss is what we do. And so I've got 3 brief things that I want to share, if that's okay.
Please go for it.
So, what is it that we can't control? The first thing we can't control is timing. If you are pursuing traditional publishing, particularly, we don't know what timing looks like. There's really no way to control when the lightning is going to strike and there's going to be the right editor at the right time with the right project. That can feel discouraging. But at the same time, what I have discovered is that things settle in when they should. I mentioned a Bible study that I have on surrendered. Kate, it was 7 years before that Bible study was ever published. I pitched a book to an editor who was my Stronger Than Stress editor, actually, but I pitched her a different book on control. And from the time I pitched that book 7 years before till surrendered, my life completely changed. I would have been embarrassed, furious, depressed if that first book, if that would have continued. She accepted the proposal. She liked the idea. Nothing ever happened with it. But 7 years later, I wrote Surrendered. And that is my fastest growing, top selling Bible study. I think I'm just shy of 1,000 reviews on Amazon. And that is the project because my life went on a journey. And there were things that God needed to teach me, I needed to live in for years before I was ready to write about it. So timing may not always feel like it's on our side, but we've got to trust it. Second, we can't always control which project. As an agent, if I put my hat on and you're listening to me, please do not put a vice grip on the project that you have, because if you've been pitching it particularly to editors and agents and it hasn't sold, then it is time to move on and develop a new project. You may come back around to it. There are many authors that will tell us that a book didn't sell and years later it did sell. But you need to be willing to be open-handed. And if you've been pitching a project for a year or 2 years, set it aside. Start working on something else. God's given you more than one idea. So don't grasp onto this one project and make that like for all the marbles. And then finally, the last thing that you cannot control is where your book is going to go. We all have these ideas of where we think and how our book is going to sell. We don't have any control over that. I just mentioned, I don't know what's happening with the book, but I want to share with you 3 things you can control. And in that's where you can burn your time and energy instead of being upset about what you can't control. What you can control, number one, is knowing the audience that you are writing for. You wouldn't believe the number of people when I ask them who their target buying audience is, they don't know the answer to that question. You want to answer the question of who is most likely to buy your book. Everyone is not going to buy your book. And if you are writing for, a lot of Christian authors will say, I want to write for the non-Christian market. I appreciate that. Again, I'm a pastor. Uh, People who are not faith-based don't buy non-faith-based books. So you've got to be clear about who your audience is and be very clear about the message that you are sharing with them. Second, you want to know how you're going to communicate to them. Do you have an email list? That is the number one thing you're going to be asked by literary agents and publishers. This is the form of communication that allows you to develop the best kind of connection with your audience. For me, I'm going to wear my author hat real quick. When I look at the landscape of how I want to serve my audience, I'm a Bible teacher. That's what they expect from me. So every Monday, I write a Happy Monday devotion. And we talk about the things that are in my books and my Bible studies. I'm not selling my books and Bible studies, but I am talking about stress. I'm talking about prayer. I'm talking about letting go of control. And that is the place, I call it now ministry. That's where God is working on a week by week basis. So you all want to make a difference in your life with the writing that you have. And when you find the best way to serve your audience, you're going to see how God is using you to make a difference in their lives every single week. The book is not going to be what makes the difference. Your personal connection to your audience is what's going to make the difference. And then finally, that you have a good connection system. You need to have a website that is up to date and that is user friendly and warm. You need to have something that entices them to join your community, an effective lead magnet. And you also want to have a way online on social media of inviting people over to your website. These are the things that you can control. And if you need more resources on how to do some of these things, at booksandsuch.com, my agency, we do a weekly blog that we walk through how to do all of these things.
Well, and I'm going to reiterate that because I love your blog. You all are so generous and smart and helpful and, just wise. And so I strongly encourage folks to check it out. Well, I love this conversation. Again, I apologize. Speaking of things, again, you can't control. My camera has just died on me, but I'm like, I wish you could see me because I'm nodding and grinning and loving every word you're saying. So, well, I know we need to wrap up in a few minutes, but maybe just to remind folks where they can find you online, where they can find your books, and if you want to if you have anything else you want to add about either your current, most recent projects or just your journey in general, anything you want to share is a gift. So thanks.
Well, thank you again for having me and letting me share. For everyone who's listening, thanks for joining. I told Kate when we logged on, I'm having the worst hair day ever, which is why I have this hat on even though I'm indoors. And so we're rolling like it's real, people. So I would love to stay connected with you. If you want to connect with me, just being Barb, the author, find me on Instagram at Barb Roose. If you want to connect with me, jump into Happy Monday. Come on over and visit me at my online home at barbroose.com. There's a place where you can drop in your name and email, and you will be on my Happy Monday list. And when you do that, I have a free gift for you. I actually created, if you've ever done a vision board, I actually created a digital prayer board. So you'll get a free link to the digital prayer board. And if you get distracted in prayer, or if you want a creative way to begin a prayer practice, this prayer board, super fun, super beautiful. There's encouragement cards like these. There are really important reminders of how to pray for people. Like I've got here's prayer cards where you can write out prayer cards, praying for people's salvation. I have something I love called the 5-finger prayer that's right here. So using all of your digits. So this is a digital prayer board that you can download when you go to barbroose.com. Now, if you want to find me as an agent, you can go to booksandsuch.com. There is a submission tab there, and you will need to, if you want to pitch me any queries or proposals, you'll want to do it through the submission tab at booksandsuch.com.
Well, thank you so much, Barb. As we were joking at the start, you know, you wear many hats and you wear them with elegance and and grace. So we're so grateful for you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and for your words, for the books that you've put out into the world. And we're so grateful for your time and for your amazing energy and blessings. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor, and I pray today's conversation is a blessing to those who hear it.
Thanks. Take care.
Take